All right. Thank you so much for listening in to today's episode of the Oh My God, I Launched a podcast. Today I have Denise with me, and she's a dog trainer. And she has her own business called Everything Dog. And she helps people with the dog aggression, basically. So, welcome, Denise.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited because you're going to share a little bit about your own experience from all the launches you've done. And by the count of it, it's 11 now. So,
Yes.
you're starting to get really experienced about this, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So before we jump into your launches and you'll share what you know about that, why don't you just give us a little something about yourself? You know who you are, who you help, and how you help them.
Yeah. So I'm Denise Mazzola. I am located in New Hampshire and I help owners that are feeling frustrated and confused with their dog behaviors, with their aggressive dogs. And there's so much misunderstanding out there that there's a lot of misconceptions and a lot of myths, and I like to be a myth buster so that people can live a more harmonious life with their dogs.
Beautiful. And you have your dog with you as well on the podcast.
Yes, this is Geo. He likes to sit in chairs next to me.
So sweet. But okay, let's talk about the launches, your journey, because you mentioned before we got
Yeah,
on that you had your physical business, brick and mortar business, and then you kind of went into the online business. But start where do things start? Let's start from the
yeah.
beginning.
So, yep. So for 10 years, I worked at a local animal shelter as their head trainer. So I did a lot. I did behavior consults. I did training. I trained trainers. I trained people to be dog trainers as well. And in late 2009, I was laid off, completely blindsided, really never saw it coming. And through all that sort of misery and despair and all the things that go along with getting laid off, a very good friend of mine said to me, when you look into the future, what do you see? And I said, well, I'm never working for anybody else again. I'm going to work for
Hmm.
myself. So that's when I sort of started my own business. And I had a good reputation in the area. I've been here for 30 years. I've been training dogs and people for 30 years. So people were reaching out and finding me, and online or offline was going very
Yeah.
well. And in 2018, I was like, gosh, I drive around, I see 5 people a day. I'm often saying the same things, sitting on their couch, and then I drive to the next house. And in New Hampshire, that could be 100 miles in a day to see five
Wow.
people. I thought there's got to be a way that I can talk to more people at once and have a bigger impact and help more dogs and more people. Because when we're talking about dog aggression, whether it's inner family, like you have 2 dogs or 3 dogs and there's fighting, whether you're talking about resource guarding, the dog that's protective of you or a bone or a toy or all of the above, or the dogs that want to eat your guests when they come into the house, right? It's all
Yeah.
aggression. And then, sort of the favorite is the dog that turns into a twirling dervish at the end of the leash anytime they see a person or a dog. And those owners are embarrassed and they're confused and they're frustrated and there's so much misinformation. And I felt like I could have a much better impact on people and the dogs, because yes, I'm a coach, but it's not just you,
Hmm.
right? There's this other entity, this other being with their own agenda and their own genetics at play. So in 2018, I joined BBD and I did the monetize before you make it. So we did a course, and I think I did my first launch in October of 2018, and I had 4 people register, which in my hindsight vision was
Yeah.
fantastic. But in that brain set that I had then, I was
Right.
devastated. Um, and when I look back at the numbers, right, like they were
Hmm.
great, but I didn't have all of that sort of information in my brain. Besides not serving the 100 people that I'd hoped for, I had 4 people, and those group Zoom calls were way more powerful than I had even anticipated them being, because they got to hear my answers to each of
Hmm.
them, and they got to hear each other, and the community support that formed, and the talking back and forth to, like, they offered advice to each other even during the
Hmm.
call sometimes. And then part of that is they have a private Facebook group as well.
Oh.
So that solidified in my mind that I never didn't want to do it. I'm a bigger go home personality. Like I've just always been that way. And failure isn't really an option for me. So if this didn't work, I didn't have a plan
And
B.
did you feel like it felt
I
like a
just,
failure when you just got those four? Yeah.
oh, I felt like a huge
Hmm.
failure. I was so all up in my emotional whatever. Like I was not who I was in 2018 is not who I am now. And just so your listeners know, I don't mind sharing I'm 60. And it's just, I don't know. I look at what the younger generation's doing and I'm like, wow, I wish I had that mindset way back
Hmm.
then. So I kept buying courses, I kept launching, and we never made it past 4 people. Some launches had 0. Um, that was a humbling
Yeah, I can
experience.
imagine.
And a lot of the coaches, I think you're a part of BBD, and what James Wedmore, you either get the results you want or you get the lessons you
Yeah.
need. And boy, I was really angry at all those
You
early
didn't want those
lessons.
lessons.
No, I did not. I just, but I call it the keep warm sequence, when to start Facebook ads. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts. I didn't find the process
Mm.
easy. Sometimes I felt like I was moving rocks uphill, and, but like I said, I'm go big or go home, and not doing it was never really an option for me. So I think the things that really changed for me 2020, as horrible as it was with COVID, and I don't anyway want to minimize that. For me personally, in business wise, it allowed people to realize that dog training could happen
Exactly.
virtually, which I think was a big obstacle that was hard to sort out beforehand. It says, should I keep, my thing is saying something funny. Should I keep
Yeah,
going?
just keep it going, because I'll just grab the web recording, hopefully, anyway. So,
Okay. So 2020, when that happened, it allowed people to realize that dog training could happen virtually. And we did some virtual classes, we did virtual webinars, which all I think really resonated well with people. So that was a horrible time. But I think in a lot of businesses, it sort of just showed that that myth didn't apply. I don't have to be standing next to you in order to help you train your dog. And then I joined Brandon Lucero's messaging course, and that was one of the game changers that happened in 2021 into this year. And the other thing that I did is I started to work with Laura Neisner, who has, I think it's Agape Soul Spa. She's a mindset coach that is trained with Brooke Castillo, and it's hard to say which one of those made the biggest impact, but I don't think I would have had the success in 2022 without either one of those options happening for me. And so I got very clear on my messaging and the myths and misconceptions that are out there. And I also I got my mind under control. And as Laura calls it, your toddler brain, that maybe it's your ego that comes up and tells you all the things that you can and can't
mm,
do. And the, I think the other single thing, most important thing that happened is, if you talk about manifesting, people always say, you don't worry about the how, just, do whatever else. And what came to me was, you don't get to choose how those lessons come to you, whatever the lesson is that you're needing to
yeah,
learn. You just need to be open and ask yourself, what is the lesson from this? And so just before the August launch, like in early July of 2022, I received 2 kind of nasty Google reviews from previous clients. And coincidentally, the local shock collar trainer also reached out to me, wanting to do whatever. And so Laura asked me on one of our calls, what's the result that you want from this? And so that really got me thinking, right, what is it, the result? And the result of those 3 things happening, I got real clear on who I am, what I do, and how I do it. And it had been, as funny as it sounds, it had been something that I had been struggling with. And that struggle came through on the podcast, or not, sorry, not the podcast, on the webinars, because I sort of wasn't stepping into my authenticity. I wasn't sort of stepping into my power, I guess, as Brandon would say it. And so the very first webinar after that lesson that got me really clear, we had 1,429 people register for our webinars, the most ever. We had 268 people show up live, which was like an 18% conversion, the most ever. And we had 10 people buy, which was a 3% conversion.
That's good, yeah.
And most of them bought the night of, and they kind of trickle into the week and then more on car close. We had never had 10 people before. So then more lessons came, right? Like
I didn't
the
stop
way
there.
I had done. No, and I, it just never does, right? The way we had been doing our coaching calls, when you have 1, 2, 3, or 4 people, was not going to serve us when we had 10 people. So we changed how we did the coaching calls for the better. It's much better the way, like, I love having more people. And then and the Facebook group is much more dynamic with 10 people in there. And we had one person ask for a refund, and we were like, yep, our refund policy is 30 days, no questions asked. Doesn't matter. You don't have to tell me your reason. You just call, email, text, and say, I'd like a refund, and we will be happy to refund you. So then we launched again in October, and we had a total of 25 people register. Let me start again. We launched again in October. We had 2,006 people register for the webinar, far exceeding, I don't know what the percentage is, but more than August. We had about the same number show up live, right around 266. So that percentage was a little less, interestingly, but the conversion to sales doubled. So we went from 3% conversion to 6% conversion, if I did my math right. And we had 25 people buy, 16 people bought the night of. And Amy and I were like, what is happening right now? Because she's on the webinar kind of answering questions and in the background. And I actually hire my daughter, Olivia, who's 26, and she gets on the webinar, and she's, capturing comments or doing things that need to, she's doing some other things. And they were just like texting back and forth, like, we don't understand what's happening right now, because there was such an excitement. People couldn't buy it fast enough. And it was just amazing. I am having so much fun in the Facebook group, answering people's questions, looking at their videos, engaging with them. I look forward, I always have, to those group coaching calls, but there is nothing better than walking down the hall, coming into my Zoom room, usually barefoot or wearing slippers, and opening up my computer, and boop, 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 right? All these faces pop up, and some with their dogs with them. Wow. And now I can talk to 25 people at the same time and answer their questions about all the aggression that they're facing. Some people last time had a really rough day or week, and, there was tears, and that's very normal and typical, in the people that I see, because when you're struggling with aggression issues, many times you can be in a little bit of a crisis situation, depending on what the aggression is. If you're afraid that your dog is going to bite a human being, then we're worried about liability, and we're worried about a lot of things. And the blame and shame that is out there for dog owners, I'm not sure how it is in Norway, but in the United States, it's terrible. Everybody blames and shames the owner. You didn't train enough. You didn't socialize enough. You weren't alpha or dominant enough. In which none of those things are true. And so that's what I do my thought reversals on and my messaging on, in terms of ads and social media posts. And boy, it gets some people very riled up, but the far majority of people, it really resonates that, oh, I'm not to blame. And, oh, what do you mean that more socialization is the worst way to stop my dog's aggression? Everybody is saying the exact opposite of that. And I I can't wait to launch again. I can't wait to see what the lessons are. We doubled,
Hmm.
right? We doubled registrations, we doubled everything. And I'm hoping that in the first quarter of 2023 we can double again, because I feel like I'm ready for it. We're still, even going through it with these 25 people, we have a VIP option, and we have a lower level mentorship option. And we're like, oh, okay, we have this big, you can see it in my background, but I have these big Post-it notepads of paper stuck to the wall out in the living room, where we just like write it down. I mean, I'm sure there's a technical way to do this, but maybe I'm old fashioned. But
As long as it
oh,
works.
right, we need to.
Yeah.
It does, right? It's just, and Amy and I we're married and we're in the business together, so it's just something that we both can write down. And I'm
Hmm.
visual, so I like to see it. I like to see the color, and but we're tweaking how we do things so that the next time around it will be even better. And I'm glad we didn't, I'm glad we don't have 100 people yet, because I don't think I'm ready for 100 people, but I feel like, the universe is getting me
Hmm.
ready for that. Okay, here's 10. Oh, right. I can't deal with 10 people in the same way I can deal with 4. Okay,
Exactly.
great.
Yeah.
Got that solved. Okay, now we have 25 people, and now we have 5 people in VIP instead of just one. So we've learned a few
Hmm.
things there. But I love the name of your podcast, because, oh my God, I'm launching. That used to be an adrenaline, like, worry. And this last few times it was just smooth. It was
Hmm.
excitement. There wasn't like worry kind of stuff, but I am very excited for the
Yeah,
future.
and I think, like you said, from those two last launches, something really shifted, and it was your energy. Basically, it shifted big time, and I think that contributed a
Yeah,
lot to the results that you've seen today.
right, right. And all the, going through, working with so many coaches, and James and Brandon and Laura are my top
Hmm.
3 right now, and they all serve a very different. They're all very symbiotic. Like, their message is
Hmm.
somewhat similar, but how they communicate it is different, which I like. Um, but you just can't, like, force yourself into alignment, and you can't force yourself to be
Yeah.
excited. You know what I mean? Like, it's, and again, like, some of the younger people that I see in these groups, like, kudos to you guys, because you've nailed this out, figured this out. You were raised differently than maybe I was. I don't know what it is, but it is never too late. And that's why I really wanted to underscore
Hmm.
that, hey, I'm 60 and I can sort this out. Um, Anybody can.
Absolutely.
Anybody can.
Absolutely. Did you do any changes for all of the previous launches that you did? Like when you said you got some zero sales, you still get some four. Did you do any changes over the 10 other launches that you did?
Oh yeah, I think the changes that we were doing, we had a couple. I don't remember when we worked with another woman, and she helped us with our sales page. Um, we played with different things in our Facebook ads, and rewrote some emails. But really, the biggest thing was stepping into who I am and what do I do and how do I do it, and getting those really tough lessons. And I feel like the universe gave it to me a month before our August launch. And I don't want people to think that, oh, I was really happy about that. I mean, I was still working with Laura Neisner, and I Voxered her. I could hardly talk. I was just like crying. I was so upset
Hmm.
about the whole thing. But talking through her with her, my mindset and what did I want the results to be. And um, I wrote my responses to those reviews to the people that are thinking of working with me. I'm not going to change their mind or their opinion. That wasn't my goal. And and I met with this trainer. I wasn't going to respond in any other way besides in person. So we met at Starbucks, and he kind of came in guns blazing, and he's been training dogs for 5 years, and his methodology is shock collars and
Hmm.
prong collars. That is not my methodology. I never will be. And just talking to him, I came away just thinking and processing, and I don't know, like it just it just came very quickly after that I look at the whole dog, not just the behavior, which I've always known, but I couldn't
Hmm.
articulate it. And if you're looking at just the lunging, barking, twirling dervish at the end of the leash when you're trying to walk your dog, you're missing so much. You're missing everything about what's happening with that dog. That's the end result of fear, of anxiety, of past traumas the dog's experienced. And you have to peel away all the onions, all the layers of that onion, to really be able to help the dog in a long
Hmm.
lasting way. And it's that process for whatever it is. The dogs, I call it stranger danger, the dogs that are trying to eat guests. Um, and we have to look at the genetics of the dog. All of our dogs were bred to do
Yeah.
something. And at least in the United States, we tend to buy or adopt dogs based on appearances. Oh, he doesn't shed. Okay, so you've gotten like the most famous ones right now are the golden doodles or the labradoodles, labs and
Right.
poodles mixed. So both labradors and poodles are
Mm.
hunting breeds. Okay, so are you a hiker? Do you go out and get a lot of exercise because you're combining two
Hmm.
hunting breeds? They're potentially going to need a lot of
Yeah.
exercise. Geo sitting here is a yellow lab. He's what everybody wants because he doesn't require a lot of exercise. He's really mellow. So, I mean, there's a spectrum, right? We have to talk about that, like the spectrum of where your dog lands on their genetic scale and sort that out. But I can't remember your original question, but we tweaked everything through all the launches, but the last two, um, I stepped into who I am, and that was the biggest difference. Like the one in August, that webinar just poured out of me. I hardly needed any prompts. I'm like I have like some people use
Hmm.
teleprompters or whatever, but I sort of have these notes on the wall. And then when I did October's, I looked at and reviewed August, and I thought, wow, I was on fire in August. How am I going to do better in October? But I looked through it, and Brandon had just done a webinar training and subconscious mind. So I threw in a little bit of that. It wasn't, quite as polished as I'd like. And it was just great. It was just great. I mean, I love teaching. So I love standing up and talking to people and teaching them something. And it just, it just all started to
Yeah.
fall into place. It's just
Yeah.
exciting.
And did you feel like the messaging changed as well because you did step into the power of what you actually truly believed?
Yeah. Yeah. The messaging was
Hmm.
real clear. There wasn't, I, I addressed all of the types of aggression, just like I sort of have done here, because that was a question. I addressed um, people's objections to, right? Like why they think they can't do it. Time and money are always
Hmm.
the biggest ones. And I just talked about those things. And before our August launch, I completely rewrote our sales page, much to my um, VA's dismay that I was doing this last minute Larry. But I went through the sales pitch by design course inside of BBD. And that helped me get real clear on some things. The sales page, I think, is a lot better. I think it
Hmm.
covers all those points. And I finally made a home run offer, which I don't think I had done before. I really feel like my ego was in the way of, like, right now, the the beta launch in 2018 was $294, I think. And then we launched again, and I was working with another coach, and she suggested that the price should be increased to like 900 and
Hmm.
something. So we did that. And I don't know, I'd have to look back, but maybe one or two people bought. But the people that were buying were the people that knew us
Right. Yeah.
already, that had worked with us, that had some touch point physical, like, we'd had a call with them or whatever. So it wasn't indicative of whether the messaging was working. And then, I think we started to do 3 webinars. So we did 3 because that was like the big
Hmm.
thing in the industry. And then at some point we worked with another coach, and they said, well, why you're doing 3? Well, we were doing 3 because so-and-so said to do 3. Okay. So they said to do 2. So we did 2. And then at the new generation messaging, I did he had his, it wasn't a virtual event. Last year in 2021, it was in Los Angeles, and I went out to that. And Brandon and I were doing a hot seat. And he asked, why are you doing 2 webinars? And I said, because so-and-so said to do that. I mean, I consider myself very coachable, right? He said to me, well, what if you did 1 and it converted? I said, that would be fantastic. And so I started to do 1. So, and honed in the messaging.
Yeah, I don't personally, I don't feel like, whether you do a webinar, you do a challenge, live launch, whatever, I don't feel like that's the thing that's going to make or break it. I think it's more related to what you did, like the energy shifted, the messaging was on point. I think, and the offer obviously is a good one. But I think those 3 things are like so much more important than what kind of mechanism you choose.
Correct. Yeah. So the price was $997 for a number of years, and we, we're getting 0, 1, or up to 4, and primarily people that we'd already worked with, which was fine, but clearly the messaging wasn't working. Then I did the sales page by design. I dropped, and we decided we would do a 2-tiered level. So and Brandon had suggested like the price anchor. So we did the mentorship, which is a full pay of $385 or 5 payments of $92. And the sales page, of course, led with the $92, anchored by the VIP full pay option of $13.99. So that seems like a no-brainer. And I did a checklist on the sales page of what you get for mentorship and what you get for VIP, because at least for me, I'm a visual learner, and that's always been helpful for me when I was buying courses or whatever. And I gave the 385 people like a lot of access to other courses we have. They get, coaching calls with us. I just tweaked it in such a way that I was able to set aside my ego and realize, like, look, you need people in the course. You've got to get some testimonials. You need that social proof. And once it's converting, consistently, which in my mind in 2023, if it converts the same way, then the second launch in 2023 will adjust the pricing. And I've already got that sort of sorted out and planned ahead. So, and if it doesn't, then we'll ask why and where, what needs to change and what needs to tweak. And I'm going to look at like my email sequence from, I call it the keeping warm sequence. From the time you register for the webinar until the webinar, you try to keep your audience warm and engaged so that you'll increase the show up rate. So I'm going to look at that and see if there's anything that can be done differently. I'll look at some of the courses that I have access to see if there's some wording or something that I can, change or get in there to see if we can increase the number of people that show up live to the event. And, if we keep converting at 6%, I'd be real happy about
That's a great number
for sales. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, you definitely have, I would say, a different mindset than what you did before, where basically 4 people was a total failure, and now you're just thinking about, okay, well, if this doesn't work, we'll check in with that. We'll look at the numbers. We'll adjust here. I mean, it's a totally different person.
Yes. Yeah. And in the last year, even from when I started working with Laura Neisner to where I am today, I am not the same person. And I made some big investments into myself in 2021 that I'd never done before. When I joined the Brandon's course, I did the VIP option. I'd never spent that kind of money before. But I was tired of being in big groups. I really wanted more
one-on-one attention,
one-on-one personal stuff. Yeah. And what I did with Laura was completely one-on-one. It was 2 coaching calls, a month, and for an hour each. And I had access to her on Voxer and email. And, like I said, I am coachable, and I can be vulnerable in situations. So I just put it all out there for Laura because, like I said, I hadn't succeeded previous. Like doing the same old thing wasn't working for me, or I'd block off time in my calendar. It says work on the online business, but I really wouldn't know what I was supposed to be doing. And then therefore nothing would happen. Um, and she was able to help me with breaking things down into smaller bites that were achievable and that my brain wouldn't freak out about, and hold space for me in my success, even at times when I was just wondering when it was going to happen.
Exactly. Well, I love everything that we talked about. Is there something that you feel like we didn't touch on that you would love to share?
I just think for anybody out there that's listening to this that has had some success, but they're not really where they are yet, like, keep asking yourself questions, keep going forward. It's not necessarily the big things that we do, it's the small, consistent steps that we take on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis that will really move the needle. And like I said, I wasn't one to give up. So I just kept going. I wanted to, but keep on keeping on, and the fruits of your labor will show up for you.
Lovely. And how can people get in touch with you, work with you? Yeah.
Yeah. So our website is Everything Dog NH, as in New Hampshire, and the only reason it's that is because it was a lot less expensive than buying Everything Dog. So it's everythingdognh.com. And you can find us on Instagram as Everything Dog NH as well, and on Facebook we're there. Those are the two, and YouTube. We have a pretty big YouTube channel. There's a lot of good free content there as well, and that's also
Awesome.
Dog.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your own experience with the launches. We really appreciate that because I think there was a lot of gold in there because you touched on a lot of important points there. So thank you.
Well, thank you for having us and me. Gio's had some fun eating his treats in his chair.
Everybody's happy.
Great.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.